Hi everyone, my name is Katia Al-Khatib. I'm a Senior Research Officer in the Human Rights Center and Law School. So it's my great pleasure today to actually start the festivities of the Human Rights Week. By the way, happy Human Rights Week, with one of our alumni and the co-founder of her own NGO, Pamela Abiola. Thank you very much, Pamela, for being here today and for taking the time and the trouble. It's a great pleasure to have you. I'm so happy it was me who gets to host you today. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your time in Essex, and tell everybody about the NGO?
Yes, of course. So first of all, thank you guys so much for coming. Because we're a small team, it'll be great for me to find out about you guys as well and what course you're doing. But essentially, I studied my law degree here back in 2012, which is absolutely crazy because when I was coming here on the cab, they actually said that when I was at university, we had 7,000 students, but now there's over 21,000 apparently, which is manic. But I studied my law degree here back in 2012. And then after that, I went on to do my master's in international human rights and humanitarian law as well here. So I studied modules such as international rights of children, armed law and armed conflict, and refugee law. So those were a few of the modules that I studied during my master's. So yes, and then after that, whilst I was at university, I actually co-founded Revive Congo back in 2012, which is what I'm going to be talking to you about. So that's pretty much me. But it would be great actually to find out a bit about you guys. So if you could just introduce yourself and what course you're doing, and possibly just say why you chose to study your course, that would be great.
Let's have more interactive.
Yeah, let's just have some. We can make it like a conversation if you like. But yeah, do you want to go first?
So I'm Matilda. We're French actually.
Nice.
And we're having the double degree in English and French law. And I don't really know why I chose this degree, but actually it was really interesting to live abroad and to have both degree, either the English and the French one. So yeah.
Great.
And my name is Chloe. It's kind of the same, and if we stayed in France, it's only like in French system, so it was interesting to go abroad.
Great. So when you go back to France, does it mean that you can use this degree in France as well?
Actually, we have the equivalent in France.
Okay.
So we're doing
Yeah.
Okay.
We're having a part of the English degree and a part of the English and the French one, and then we have two different degrees actually.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Great. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's this is more than 3 years.
No, 3
No,
years.
it's
Really?
only
This is
Yeah.
really good. Wow.
Must be intense.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Danny. I'm from Malaysia, and I am in second year. This law, and yeah.
Oh, great.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
The floor is yours, my friend.
Great. So, Revive Congo. So today I'm going to talk about the importance of investing in our future leaders' education in poverty-stricken countries. So first of all, not working. Oh, great. So first of all, I'm going to tell you about the Democratic Republic of Congo. Do many of you know about Congo? So obviously, as you may or may not know, Congo's wealth is actually quite vast. So we are very rich in resources such as coltan, cobalt, zinc, diamonds. A lot of the things that you have today, even in front of you, like your laptops and your phones, actually come from Congo. Without Congo, we wouldn't have these devices. But unfortunately, although we are rich in resources, we are also one of the poorest countries in the world. And that's because of conflict, and that's also because, as we like to say, everyone wants a piece of Congo. And because everyone wants a piece of Congo, it means that the people of Congo do not actually benefit from the wealth. So you have a lot of exploitation, you have, again, a lot of conflict that comes from outside of Congo that more or less comes into the country and destabilizes the country, which is why Congo is still seen as one of the poorest countries in the world. And again, like I said, the roots of this paradox lies in, again, private interest, neighboring countries, and colonizers. So although we gained our independence back in 1960, I believe, by Belgium, it's kind of bittersweet because we've never really been independent. We are still kind of facing the repercussions of being colonized by the Belgium. So the birth of Revive Congo. So I'll just tell you a bit about myself and about Revive Congo. So I'm originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm the youngest of 7. So my family and I actually left Congo when I was an infant to come here as refugees. And this was back in 1993. And essentially it was my first time going back to Congo in 2012 for the first time ever. And I was really excited about that. So I went to go and visit Kinshasa, which is the capital city of Congo. And I also went to go and visit where I'm from, which is Lubumbashi and Ligasi. Essentially, when I was there, I found that a lot of people, including my family, had aspirations, they had dreams, they had goals and visions, but they weren't able to essentially make their dreams a reality. And that was mainly because of poverty, because they couldn't afford to go to school, because of child marriage, and because of poor sanitation. So around the world, you'll find that young girls especially find it difficult to go to school because of poor sanitation. And that's mainly because of their menstrual cycle, because they're not able to go into school during their menstrual cycle. They're not able to keep clean. So a lot of the times you'll find that these young people are at home, they're being forced to marry, or they're staying at home to help their family, specifically their mother, with the house chores. So when I went there, I had this kind of burning desire to come back and do something about it. I felt as though I owed it to them after leaving the country at such a young age. I wanted to see what I can do back home to contribute to making it a better place. So I actually came back, spoke to my mentor at the time, and I said to her, look, I really want to do something in Congo. Although I'm studying my law degree, I want to make loads of money. I want to be a corporate solicitor. I also want to help my country. And she said, if you are really passionate about doing this, why not speak to other people and see who would want to be involved in your initiative? So she put me into contact with my co-founder, who's absolutely amazing. She was also studying law at the time, called Lakeisha. And we were just going back and forth with emails. And then we basically spoke to our community and said, hey, we're going to have a meeting. And if you're interested in helping Congo, come to the meeting. So essentially, we had a meeting. We had about 20 people turn up to the meeting. And after that first meeting, we had about 7 people, which was absolutely fine, because those were the 7 people that wanted to help. And we decided that what we wanted to focus on was the youth in Congo. And this is because when I was in Congo, I found that more than 30% of the population in Congo are actually the youth. However, 7.6 million people between the ages of 5 to 17 in Congo are still out of school. And half of that is young girls. So we wanted to focus on, as we say, equipping and educating Congo's future leaders, because we wanted to give them something so that they can continue the work that we're doing and also help their communities, help their family, and rebuild Congo. So like I said, that was the reason why we started Revive Congo, and that was the reason why we decided to focus on young people, specifically children. And just to add as well, as Revive Congo, what we do is we focus on primary education, which I'll talk about a bit later on. But that was mainly, again, because we found that there are not enough children in Congo that are in primary education, my apologies. And we found that without primary education, they're not able to progress towards secondary school, they're not able to progress to college or university, which means that they are not able to essentially become what they want to become without education. Why invest in our future leaders' education, specifically primary education? So like I've just said, the reason why we wanted to focus on young people was because we found that the population of Congo, 30% of the population of young people, and their rights are infringed in terms of their right to education. So we looked at international law, as you do, and we found that the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child affirms that every child has the right to education. So every child should be given that opportunity. And this was something that we wanted to do. We wanted to ensure that every child in Congo has the opportunity to have an education. We also looked at the Sustainable Development Goals, and we found that the goals are that by 2030, they wanted to ensure that girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. And as I've just said, we found that without primary education, they can't go towards secondary education, which is why we decided to focus on primary education. We also found that 4.2 said by 2030, they wanted to ensure that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development. I want to highlight girls and boys, because as you see, there is a gender disparity where you have more boys going to school than girls. We wanted to ensure that we had an equal amount of girls, if not more girls, on our program, which is what I'm going to talk about now. I'll go here. So in terms of what we do, just to give you the specifics, we support the schooling of orphans that are based in Kinshasa. So how we did that is that in 2017, we had another Congo trip as a team, and we wanted to look at different organizations and places where we can start supporting practically young people to go to school. So we came across this amazing orphanage called Monsieur Marie-Mère Orphanage that is based in Kinshasa. We spoke to Sister Bernadette, who runs the orphanage, and we found that she wasn't getting enough help from the government. She wasn't having enough money for food or even to send the children to school. So we decided that we was going to partner with that orphanage that has around over 50 children now. When we were there in 2017, they had about 30, but there's over 50 children at the orphanage. And we decided that what we wanted to do was support the schooling of these children by simply paying for their tuition fees, but also paying for their stationery, paying for their equipment, and seeing how we can run activities in the orphanage that can benefit every child. So because we're still a growing organization, we found that we didn't have the money to send every single child to school. So we asked Sister Bernadette to actually select the children. We wanted her to be a part of the process, because one thing that we do want to do is we want to get rid of this whole idea of the white savior kind of theory, which is that, you know, we want the Western world to lead kind of our projects. We wanted to remove that. So we wanted her to be in basically at the forefront in making these decisions. And just to give you like one case study, there was one girl in particular that we support, and she's on here. You'll see her picture. Her name is Brunel. And when we met her, she was very timid, very shy. She didn't really talk much. She was just very to herself. And basically, Brunel came from a family where she was mistreated, where she was physically and emotionally abused. So Sister Bernadette decided to take her in as an orphan because she was being mistreated by her family. So Brunel didn't really have a voice. She wasn't really confident. And that was back in 2017. But if you see pictures of Brunel now, which you'll see, she is very confident, very bubbly, and she is actually one of the highest scoring children in her class. She's doing absolutely amazing. And we wanted Sister Bernadette to be in the position where she decides the people that can benefit from them. So currently we have about 6 children that we're supporting, but as a whole, we support the orphanage by, again, running these activities that are led by our volunteers based in Kinshasa. So not only do we support the schooling of the young people in the orphanage, we also support the development of our volunteers that are over the age of 18. And this is essentially because we want to build their CV, enhance their experience, and give them employment opportunities. So although we cannot yet offer them a salary, we do pay for their food, their transport, and any sort of things they need when they go and volunteer for us. And again, we get them to lead the activity. So we get them to decide what activities we should run at the orphanage for the young people. So this year alone, we had our volunteers, who are about 2 to 3, that decided that they wanted to do something for Children's Mental Health Day. So they led on the project, they got the children to play games and to basically draw pictures of what makes them happy, and they stuck them on the wall in the orphanage, which was pretty cool. That's one of the things that we also do as well. In the UK as well, so although a lot of our work is in Congo, we found that in 2016 actually, after doing some research, we found that young people in Congo are actually underachieving academically. So in terms of the African diaspora, young Congolese people are not doing so well academically. And this was because of the language barrier. So in Congo, the language that is usually spoken is French, Lingala, different languages. Whereas if you compare it to Nigeria and Ghana, they speak English. So it's easier for their parents to help them with schoolwork, for instance. We also found that they were living in more deprived areas in the UK and were coming from single parent households. So we decided that it was important to see how we could also build their aspirations and teach them about Congo, the importance of helping back home, but also the importance of education. So back in 2017, we started our annual youth program, which is free because we wanted to make it accessible. And it's been funded by the National Lottery, the John Leon's charity, O2 Think Big. So thankfully, since it's been running, we've always received funding. And what we do during this program is we get to teach the young Congolese people about the history of Congo, Congo's natural resources, but also about mental health, about how to manage social media and how they can play their part in helping Congo. So that's how we invest in Congo's future leaders. Another thing that we do as well, and that we're going to continue doing, is publishing reports in order to raise awareness about the current issues young Congolese people are facing in the UK and in the DRC. So again, with the previous thing that I just mentioned, young Congolese people were underachieving back in 2017. We had some interns actually do some research this year alone, and they found that young Congolese people are still underachieving. So what we want to do is we want to figure out why that is the case and how we can continue to help them build their aspirations and to achieve higher grades. Another way that we invest in Congo's future leaders is by collaborating with existing organizations in Congo to equip university students with employable and entrepreneurial skills. So again, with our Congo trips, we always see how we can partner with different organizations or how we can connect with them. So in the past, we've partnered with an amazing organization called Congo Leadership Initiative, and they basically run a program where they select university students to be a part of this program and provide them with entrepreneurial skills. And after that, they give them a small loan for them to start their business. So that can be selling eggs, that can be selling drinks at university, or that can be even doing hair. So what we do is every time we go to Congo, we teach them different things. So like how to speak English, how to use social media to grow their businesses, and also help them with their CV writing. So this is a way that we ensure that not only are we helping the young people, but we're also helping the young adults. So that's how we are investing in Congo's future leaders. I'm going to go back to this part. So why you should invest in Congo, but also in countries that are still deemed as poor. Decolonization is a really, really big one. It's really important that as organizations, we see how we can empower the future. And I think more and more international organizations, what you'll find is that now there is this narrative and this kind of push towards actually building up the community. So giving the community the power to actually let their beneficiaries lead. So again, trying to move away from the white savior mentality, but seeing how we can do this decolonization and see how we can empower the community to help themselves. One thing I have found is that sometimes you may think that what you know what people want, but you actually don't know until you ask. And I think this was a big thing when I started Revive Congo that I haven't mentioned that I will now. When we started it initially, we said, okay, how we're going to help the young people is that we're going to start sending them clothes. We're going to send them food. We're going to help with medical equipment. But then we sat down with the Congolese people and they said, these are all great. Sending us clothes, sending us money for food, it's all great. But what we actually need is education. What we need is updated material. What we need is that we need people to teach us how to do business. This is what we need. And I find now that this whole process of decolonization is something that we need to be awakened to, and we need to know that it's actually important to ask the community what they need rather than thinking that we have the answers, if that makes sense. Another reason why it's important for us to invest is because it's about breaking the cycle of poverty. So if you give someone education, but you don't break the cycle of poverty, it means nothing, which is why we try and cover all areas. We give them primary education, but we also speak to the young Congolese people, young adults, if you like, and see how we can provide them with employable skills, how we can provide them with entrepreneurial skills. Another thing that we're trying to do in the future for our next trip is we're going to see how we can actually speak to businesses and organizations there so that we can link our young adults with them and see if they can provide them with volunteering opportunities. So if, for example, they need, if we have a young adult that is, I don't know, they have their studies in nursing and they want to become a nurse and they go and volunteer at a hospital, even though there may not be an employment opportunity now, maybe in the next 2 years when they're recruiting, they can have that person in mind because they've trained them already. So breaking the cycle of poverty, and also ensuring that we can exercise their human rights. I think that's the reason why we do law, right? That's the reason why we do international human rights, because we want people to be able to exercise their rights. You know, again, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, 1989, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that everyone has the right to education. That's something that we want to do. We want to ensure that everyone can exercise their rights, regardless of their age. Lastly, how can you support our work if you do want to support our work? So this is just kind of, if you want to find out more about Revive Congo, you can find us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook and LinkedIn, Revive Congo. You can visit our website as well. You can donate to our cause. We've also had a few people at the university, which has been really amazing, do fundraising activities for us during Black History Month. And we also give people the opportunity to sponsor a child. So at the minute, we do have 6 children that we are currently sponsoring, but over the last 2 years, especially during COVID, we had more support because people really wanted to see how they can support us to send more and more children to school. Unfortunately, before COVID hit, our aim was to actually start supporting 10 children. We wanted to start supporting 10 children at this stage. But because COVID hit and we couldn't visit Congo and we wanted to really monitor and evaluate our work, we decided against it and we thought, actually, let's just keep the numbers small until we can go there physically and see how the work is developing. But if you are interested in sponsoring a child's education, you can email us. Yeah, that's about it, really.
Thank you very much for very, very amazing, actually, talk and work. Please have a seat. I would open up the floor for some questions, if anybody has. If not, I will use my prerogative as a chair and start on my own questions.
How do you do practically to raise money? Is it from donations? Do you have like partnerships with companies or things like that?
That's a really, really good question. So recently we've been looking at financial sustainability, but initially I would say over 60% of our money comes from fundraising, but then the latter comes from grants. And that's grants and funding application forms. And that's basically because we get those funds and grants specifically for our UK work because of the work that we're doing. So people tend to fund us for our projects. So with the youth program, again, thankfully, since 2017, we've always been able to secure funding for it. With our stuff in the DRC, because it's quite tricky when you're doing fundraising, if it's not beneficial for those in the UK, it's always quite difficult to get funding for work back home, which is what we're trying to look at. So 60% still comes from donations.
If I may follow up on this, so the donations will be coming up from UK funding bodies.
Say that again?
The funding would be from UK funding bodies.
Yeah, the funding.
Have you tried looking at European sources or?
No, we haven't. No, and that's another good one. We haven't, and I think this is something that we are trying to explore. I guess it was something that we wanted to do a year ago, but because of COVID, we then had to kind of change our priorities. So it's only now that our focus is to go back to look at funding opportunities in Europe.
And I was also thinking, I'm going out on a limb actually, but are there like probably transnational networks that could actually kind of cover these kind of work? Because you're saying it's actually quite difficult to fund anything out there in the Congo, and you have to in a way link it to something in the UK. But I was wondering if there's any transnational networks that you can build on already.
Yeah. That's a really good question, actually. I think this is something that I can actually develop with the team. But again, if I'm honest with you, our focus kind of changed over the last 2 years of funding. Our focus was more to do with how can we sustain ourselves to look after the beneficiaries. Like so the orphanage, as you can imagine, COVID took a big hit in terms of the UK. It impacted us negatively, and we're still seeing the very fruits of that. Back home, it was even worse because they rely on farming, so they couldn't go and get their crops, for example, or their beans, because they were used to people giving them money or like food. They didn't have that because people weren't coming to the orphanage. People were quite scared because obviously the orphanage is overcrowded. You've got over 50 children. So they just naturally didn't have that. So it meant that for us, we had to think about, okay, how can we, in the immediate term, how can we see how we can look after them and sustain them? And that was kind of like our focus. How can we sustain our current beneficiaries? But now, going into 2023, we are actually looking at how we can sustain ourselves more financially as an organization. That's something that I can look at.
Yeah, well, that's, I assume that the priorities would actually change with the change of circumstances. So while the priority would be to education, obviously food would be a more immediate need in times, in hard times such as COVID, I suppose. And you actually did that. I think it's amazing, and I can't help but comment on it. People-led projects. This is a thing that is absolutely. It's an idea that's been circulating for a while, but it's not been acted upon enough, I would say. It's again not prescribing to people what we think you need, but also actually asking you what you need and providing you with the toolkits to do what you want and do something that is actually sustainable. So education will take you further, a lot further forward in society than actually providing you with, as you said, maybe some clothes, maybe some food, maybe. So I think, yeah, this is wonderful aspect of your work that is absolutely laudable. Does anybody have another question? Well, until you do, I wanted to ask you, what are the challenges you faced in this process from the time you decided to start your NGO, you found it and co-found it with your friends or colleagues, and up until this moment? And I'm sure the road hasn't been smooth all the way through, but at least the major challenges that you faced, and also probably the things that you wish would change in the field itself.
That's a really good question. I think initially the first challenge that we faced was actually registering ourselves as a registered charity in the UK. That was a big challenge. I think it took us about 2 years to register ourselves in the UK. Actually, no, let me be more specific. It took us 4 years. Yeah, because obviously, as you can imagine, we were like law students doing our law degree at the same time, but we're really passionate about helping our country. We were 19 at the time, so we were guiding ourselves. So we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what to do. So we were just doing these applications to the Charity Commission. We'll get rejection, review it in 3 months, get rejection, review it in 3 months. And we're just like, okay, what is going on? We need help. So that was 2012, and then 2017 hit. And we were just like, okay, we're going to Congo in July 2017. We need to go to Congo with a registered number. We need to do it. So we then decided to seek help, and we spoke to another organization that was registered, also doing work in Congo, but specifically in Goma. We sat down with them and we said, please help us, because getting a registered charity number is not easy, number one, especially when the work that you're doing is not just for those in the UK. If it's specifically for those in the UK, it's easy. But when it's for people outside of the UK, that's when it's quite difficult, because they want to know, okay, safeguarding, how are you safeguarding these people? How are they going to benefit? How are you going to do it? Do you know like the guidelines in terms of doing international work? So thankfully, we spoke to someone who was doing work in Goma. They helped us out, and it took us 4 years. So that meant 4 years of not being registered, which meant 4 years of not being applicable for any funding opportunities or minimal funding opportunities, because there were funding opportunities for organizations for small projects, but as the stuff that we wanted to do on a higher scale, we needed a registered charity number in order to apply. That was one. Another big challenge to date is obviously the work that we do is overseas. We are based in the UK, and we saw that again when COVID hit, when we couldn't visit the orphanage for 3 years. we couldn't physically go there. We didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what was happening with the children. We couldn't speak to the teachers or the schools. It was very challenging. And also, we didn't want to obviously put our volunteers at risk by going to the orphanage when there was a high risk of COVID. Although, if I'm honest with you, the risk in Congo wasn't as much, but there was still COVID going on. So we found that was difficult, because it was difficult for us to monitor and evaluate the work that we had started a few years before COVID. So that's number two. And I guess number three is, just like any organization or any small organization will tell you, money is always a big factor. Because when you're not a big international organization and you're a small organization, you then have to convince people to support your work. And most of the time, you'll find organizations or companies to support you, but they will say, oh, sorry, we already give to the UN, or we already give to Save the Children, we already give to Red Cross. So sorry, you're doing great work, but we can't really help you. And that's been a really big challenge. And I think what we're trying to do now as an organization is see how can we move away from relying on funding, and how can we upscale and be more financially sustainable by providing paid services. So obviously we've been running for 10 years now. So myself and Lakeisha, who I co-founded the charity with, are, as you like, experts in terms of running an organization. So how can we provide consultations, or how can we teach people how to run a youth program? And how can they engage young people? This is something that people are really struggling to do, especially after COVID. They're struggling to engage young people. So, although we're finding it hard to receive money from big organizations, we're seeing how we can help ourselves with paid services. So those are kind of challenges. And I think, to answer the second part of your question in terms of what would we have done differently, I would say seek. Oh, sorry, was that the second part?
No, I wouldn't. Wasn't that? But I would welcome that. I wanted to say what the things that you would like to see change in the field.
Sorry,
but there are things you wanted actually to do differently. It would be good for me and for everybody here to actually know.
So in terms of what I would like to see change in the field, I would say more support for community-led projects. I think obviously we have these amazing international organizations that are big, but I think it would be really important if the government essentially would support more, or would put out more funding for small organizations that are helping people on a practical level. So you'll find that when you give to big organizations, although yes, your donation is going to a good cause, it kind of goes down in terms of like how much money actually goes to the beneficiaries, if you like, in all honesty. But you'll find that when it comes to smaller organizations, let's say you give £10, you know that at least £7 is going to the beneficiaries. But when you're giving £10 to a bigger organization, about £2. And I'm not saying I'm against bigger organizations, let me just be clear for the camera. I am very much, in favor of them, but I think it would be great if the government found a way to also support and give funding opportunities for organizations that are doing small organizations, basically. That's one. And number two, I would say I would love for there to be more diversity when it comes to international organization, when it comes to those that are in leadership. It would be really nice to see people that can actually relate to the work that they're doing in places of leadership, like actually being the senior advocacy manager, someone that is actually from an international development country, that they're trying to support. I would love to kind of see that.
I agree. I totally agree with you. Circling back to the challenges that you were facing and actually trying to find ways to sustain yourself as an NGO. I was thinking maybe offering consultancies, training, like if you have that, I'm not sure, or do you think there's a chance in the field for you to do so, to be hired in order to do these things, train other people? At least you have experience in the Congo. You can design programs. You have quite a lot of experience in education.
100%, and I think this is something that I wish we had learned sooner. I think sometimes it's a confidence thing. I think what you'll find is that, especially as young women as well, and as women of colour, sometimes our confidence may not be as higher than, you know, other people that are not women of colour. And I found that people were actually shocked by the work that we were doing and shocked that we had all of this kind of expertise, but we weren't actually providing a paid service, you know, sooner anyway. So I think now, moving forward, I'm just like, okay, what could we have learned? I wish we had just gone for it. I wish we were just, you know, confident enough, you know, earlier on to be like, you know what, we're experts. We've done something that no one hasn't done, if that makes sense. Let's just go for it. Let's provide paid services. And also I would say another thing, that if we could go back in time, I wish I asked the questions earlier rather than later, because I feel like sometimes we may be too shy to ask questions, we may be too, you know, but I think it's so important that if you actually don't know the answer, just ask someone who does. Like, even when it comes to your assignments, like I think sometimes when I was doing my law degree, sometimes you'll just be struggling in silence. But if you just ask someone in your class or ask your lecturer or your professor or whatever, then you'll know the answer quick enough than you do, if that makes sense. Then you will. So that's what I would say.
I think this is a kind of it's a trait that you feel like, okay, I'm gonna try and figure this by myself, but then you realize, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It's just like all the way here. I can just do this, or not feel entitled to our actually deserved pay or deserved opportunity because of how the world makes you feel about yourself. But eventually you realize, you know what, I am. I've done great things and I should be doing this already. Like, damn, let's do this. So actually, anybody would like, yes, please go ahead.
What's your first trip in Congo plan?
When is my next trip?
Yeah.
Oh, so my team. So I actually have 2 babies. So I've just left my little baby with my mum. I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so I was supposed to go to Congo with my team this month, but I won't be because my baby's still young. But my team are actually going in the next 2 weeks. They're going, and then I'll be going next year. So what we're aiming to do now that COVID is done, we're aiming to go 3 times a year. Yeah. So if you look at our social media, you'll get updates of what we've been doing. We actually had one of our team members that done a big walk. It was a 100K walk. The walk from Saint, I don't know if you know it. Mm-hmm. It's like you basically walk the distance of England.
Oh,
yeah, something like that. So he walked it to raise 10K. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he walked it to raise 10K. So he's gonna be speaking about that. But if you look at our social media, he's talking about why he's done it. I know he's amazing. But yeah, so he'll be going, but I won't be going this year.
Well, until we have any other questions, I would say, do you have any advice to young female entrepreneurs such as yourselves who are starting now to think of their future and co-founding their own NGOs or finding their own path after finishing their law degrees or LLMs, etc.?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think one thing I will say is just go for it, because I think sometimes we are so scared about failing. Like, we don't want to fail, we don't want to do something and fail, but actually failing is not the end of the world. If you fail, so what? Do you know what I mean? The worst thing to do is not to have tried and realize that actually you could have passed it, you could have actually succeeded. So I'd say whilst you're doing your degree and whilst you're studying, just remember that whatever you can think, like, you can actually do it, but you need to be strategic in the way that you do it. So you need to make sure that you're asking the questions, you're doing the research, you're making the time to do it. Because what you'll find is that, and again, after doing my degree, I realized everyone has a degree. At the end of the day, not everyone, but you're at university and you're with students that all have a degree. Now you need to think, what is going to make you different? What is going to make you stand out? Why should someone hire you? You don't need to be an entrepreneur. Like, you don't need to co-found your own organization if you don't want to. You don't need to start your own project if you don't want to. Maybe you just want to be a solicitor, which is amazing. You just want to be a lawyer. That's absolutely amazing. But you need to figure out, how are you going to stand out on paper? Like, what's going to make you different? Okay, you're doing English and French. What else makes you different? You know, and really go for those opportunities. When I was doing my master's, I had done an internship with Freedom from Torture. So I've done a few internships for Freedom from Torture in another organisation. I made sure that I was doing different stuff at university. So I was joining different societies. I'd done like the ethics employability, something, I don't remember what it was called. I also like tried to do like a different language. I don't know if they still offer that.
I think they do.
Like, yeah, like just go for it. Like literally go for it. Like study, work hard, yes, but think about what is going to distinguish you on paper, because that is going to get them to interview you. If it's just you've got a law degree, they've got someone else who's got a law degree, but maybe that other person had an internship. They want to find, when they speak to you at interview, they want to have a conversation with you and find out more about you. So just really think about what can distinguish yourself, how you can distinguish yourself, and really just go for it. Like literally go for it, ask the questions. I wish I spoke to my professors and my lecturers more than I did, because they are actually experts. They know what they're talking about. They know the fields. And if I just asked them questions, I would have realized things sooner, if that makes sense. And I would also say, just have confidence in yourself. Like be confident. Like, be confident that you can actually do it. Like really believe in yourself. Like don't wait for anyone else to tell you that you can do it. Like really believe that you can do it and push through it. Like if someone has done it before, it means that you can do it. And I've done my law degree, done my master's, I've done it, which means that you guys can do it as well.
Thank you, Pamela. And I suppose we have in Essex, the crème de la crème of the human rights world. We do really, and it's a shame to have access to this first class world of leaders and academics and actually human rights sector, and not actually utilize it to its maximum. Thank you very much, Pamela, for your time today.
Thank you.
Taking the effort. It's been an absolute pleasure.